Hi, and welcome to RTP Business Live. I'm Bob Collier, your host, and today our guest is John Paul Schick of Ortiz and Schick. Welcome, John Paul.
Thanks, Bob.
We're glad to have you today. Why don't we kick things off, get a little bit of background, what brought you to North Carolina?
Sure. I came to college in North Carolina, went to Davidson College, and then went to law school at UNC. And I've been in the Triangle ever since, practicing as an attorney.
Found the area and liked it a lot, I take it.
Don't plan on going anywhere.
Attaboy. Well, can you help me out a little bit? What are the areas of law Ortiz and Schick can help with?
There's 5 main areas. The first one is business and corporate law. The second one is commercial real estate. Third one is construction. The fourth area that we do a lot of work in is litigation and arbitration. And then the fifth one is with surety law. And there's some bleed over between the various areas. And briefly, business and corporate law is what you would think of. Setting
Sure.
up a business, closing a business, expanding a business, putting together contracts, forms, helping with employee matters. The commercial real estate work we do, as it implies, relates to commercial real estate, buying, selling, leasing, developing, financing, dealing with neighboring property owners, what have
Okay.
you. And it's shopping centers, it's office buildings, it's industrial buildings, whatever it may be.
Primarily in the Triangle area, or?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
We've worked from the coast to the mountains. We've actually helped on projects outside of North Carolina. We work with other attorneys in other states. So usually it is within the Triangle, but with everything on the internet today and phones, we can help folks pretty much anywhere.
Great.
With the construction work we do, a lot of it is tied to commercial real estate, but a lot of it is not. Anywhere from representing contractors, subcontractors, architects, engineers, whether it be at the contract stage, where there's a negotiation or there's drafting of a contract, interpreting a contract, or if the cart's in the ditch and there is a dispute, then we help there. Which
Right.
leads me into the litigation and arbitration. We help a lot of folks with disputes. A lot of the construction disputes are handled through arbitration, but folks come to us when they have been sued, need to sue, but it's civil litigation. So none of the Matlock or NYPD Blue or any that you see on TV. And so we help folks a lot with that. And then the surety law, real quickly, most construction projects, large ones, have construction bonds involved. And most of the surety companies that write these bonds are from outside of North Carolina. And if there is a dispute over a bond in North Carolina, they need to hire North Carolina counsel. So the lawyers in Ortiz and Schick, we're only licensed in North Carolina. We don't practice in any other states. But as a result, our relationships through the years working with surety companies, whether it be construction, and they also write estate bonds. So we've helped folks with estate bond matters. But that's a specialized area of the law that we love to do. But it's hard to market, but
Sure.
it's certainly part of what we do. And again, it ties in with some of the other things we do.
Gotcha. Well, you've touched on, I believe, as you're going through the categories, but who are your clients?
Well, it depends obviously on what area of the law we're working in or who comes to us. We represent individuals, we represent companies. We represent small companies and large companies. So, individual that wants to set up a business is often a client of ours, whether it be a restaurant, a auto body shop, a tailor, a computer software company, whatever it may be. Other clients are other types of businesses. We've represented Hartford, one of the largest insurance companies in the world. The surety company clients of ours are very big. In the commercial real estate arena, our clients are developers, general contractors, subcontractors, architects, engineers. We have represented a number of engineers. So there are a lot of players in a construction project. And then we, like I said, we have clients that are small, clients that are big. We represent probably the 5th or 6th largest manager of apartment complexes in the U.S.
Wow.
So, but, it all depends on the need. of the client. And so I'm frank when folks call and say they need help with a certain thing. And if it's an area that we don't feel comfortable doing, that we haven't done, or is outside of our expertise.
Yeah, let's explore that a little bit, because let's say I've come to you with a personal injury issue, or I don't know, estate planning, go way outside the area. Can you help me?
Absolutely. I may not be able to help you with that matter.
Okay.
But we encourage our clients, we encourage our friends, we encourage people we meet to call us, to use us as a hub or as a source of information. Because I'm a big believer in, any time you spend with me as a client or as a potential client, you deserve some value out of it. And so through the years, myself, my partners, whether it be at networking events, whether it be at continuing legal education seminars, we meet lawyers that do a lot of different things, especially things that we don't do. And we keep lists of those lawyers.
Okay.
When somebody calls me and says they have a divorce they're thinking about and can I help them, I say unfortunately not. It's a very specialized area of law, but tell me what county you're in, and because in divorce law it's very important that you have a lawyer that practices in that county.
Oh, interesting.
So we keep,
okay.
But if somebody calls me up and says I've got a workers' comp claim, I say, well, here's 3 names. Give them a call, and then if one of them doesn't work out, call me back. So we encourage people to call us, even if it's outside of what we do. And one thing we pride ourselves on is if we don't know how to do it, we're not going to hem and haw and lead you on to believe that we can and then go learn it on your nickel. At least it's my belief that I'll be straightforward with you. I can't do it, or I don't know how to do it. You'd be best served with somebody who has practiced that. And
so
then,
my assumption should not be that a lawyer knows all areas of the law.
Correct.
But they may know somebody in all areas of the law and can recommend me.
Yeah, if you speak to somebody who says they know something about every area of the law, they might know enough to be dangerous. But yeah, and there are general practitioners that practice in a lot of areas that can help folks in a lot of areas. Don't get me wrong, and that's how certain lawyers expand their areas of expertise by taking on new practices. But I like to use our expertise that we've developed in the areas that we've developed. And if it's not a good fit with a client, if I think they'd be best served with somebody else, I'll introduce them to somebody else. I think that's only fair.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to touch on a hot button issue that, at least from the client side, is kind of a hot button issue. Lawyers cost money. When does the clock start ticking? I know you mentioned that you are happy to refer folks, but as soon as I pick up the phone and talk, are we on the clock? How does that work?
Absolutely not. And that is a valid concern, a valid question. Obviously, as any service industry, it costs money. But it's always been my belief that until you know you want to work with me, and I know that I want to work with you, I don't think it's fair to charge you for my time. Now, there's certainly limits. If you think, look, we need to get together for an initial 3-hour meeting, then, I would hope you would expect to have to pay for some of that time, and I would ask you to. But folks often wonder, is this going to cost me? Sometimes they ask, and if they do, I'll tell them, not for the initial consultation. We will offer folks a 30, 45-minute phone call, sit down, because sometimes it's not a good fit. Maybe they don't even have a case or a dispute that needs legal help, and sometimes we can figure that out in the initial consultation. But I often tell people right up front, it's just so it's not in the back of their head, distracting them from the conversation.
Right.
And I'll tell them, look, this is not going to cost you anything. To answer your question, the clock doesn't start, until you want to work with me and I want to work with you. And then we talk about a retainer. We talk about hourly rates. Most of our work is done on an hourly basis or on a per project basis. But certainly at the beginning, the clock doesn't start. And I think
that's peace of mind there.
Yeah, it sets some people at ease.
Yeah.
And in all our conversations, whether we work with you or not, are confidential. So I remind people of that. But I try to take the issue of the price and the cost out of the way initially.
Right.
So you can feel comfortable, tell me what your situation is, and then if I do need to refer you to somebody else, that's fine. You know, I've met you, learned a little bit about you, hopefully I've given you some value. If we work together, then great.
And you've given some clarity in that first meeting, it sounds like, as to here's what to expect going forward, and that's certainly helpful. I've done a little homework on your website, actually, and I want to ask you a question about that. When you say Ortiz and Schick has big firm expertise without the big firm, what do you mean there?
That statement gets to the core of what we do and why we do it. It's my belief, it's our belief, that people and companies that have legal needs should be able to get legal help that's competent with an expertise, but that is reasonably priced, delivered in a reasonable amount of time, with a high degree of accessibility for the players involved. So what do I mean? There are big law firms that are very good at what they do. And it's a business model that's been around for a long time. It started to change over the last 10 or 15 years, especially with the internet and technology. But a lot of people think that those are the only places that can provide legal services, legal help in certain areas, and that's just not the case. We have sat across the table, myself and my partners and lawyers in our firm. We've sat across the table from lawyers at the big firms, and or been in deals and transactions with lawyers at those firms, and just as competent, just much as an expertise. You know, the only thing that, or one big difference, is that we don't have that big price tag. We don't have the big offices to pay for. We don't have the big advertising budgets to pay for.
How about the layers? I mean, I wonder sometimes, you know, I've got what I think maybe is a critical issue, and I need some quick advice on that. Am I going to have to work my way up through the paralegal, up through the junior, up through the, you know, before I get to the person that really, I think, has the answer in the...
Not with us.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons that we started this firm, was that when you call me directly. You get my direct number. There's no switchboard or receptionist. Certainly there are other team members if I'm not available, but you can reach me. You know, before law school, I worked at a law firm, large law firm, one of the 5 biggest law firms in the world. And it was an eye-opening experience for me, where I saw paralegals, junior lawyers, senior lawyers, junior partners, senior partners. I mean, I rode in an elevator once with the senior partner on the case I was working on, and he didn't know who I was.
Oh my goodness.
And so I can only imagine with a client calling in, wanting to speak to a decision maker or someone with the answers. We're very different there. You know, we encourage people to reach out to us however is easiest for them, whether it be email, phone call, text messages. I'm texting with a lot more clients. And so that's part of, you know, what we pride ourselves on. One more thing I will point out is I've often seen invoices from law firms to their clients that are rather vague. And I've always asked myself, how can you do that as a law firm, and how as a client can you accept that? We actually, it's a small thing, but it's a big deal to us. We pride ourselves on our detailed, clear invoices. Now, it sounds kind of strange, but I think that when you as a client are paying for my services, you deserve to know a little more about who my phone call was to.
Oh, absolutely.
Or what it was about. And so it's a small detail, but it's something I think that sets us apart. Another thing that sets us apart from some of the big firms is you get very detailed invoices from us, and then we encourage our clients, if they've got any questions about them, call us.
Right, right. Now that's a comfort right there. Well, John Paul, the worst has happened. I've got an issue. I think I need to file a lawsuit. Is that my best option?
I hate to give you the typical lawyer answer of it depends. It really does depend, but as an initial matter, it's usually not your best option. Unless you've been through a lawsuit, What a lot of people don't know is that they are expensive, they are slow, they take a lot more time than you think, they are stressful. What people see in movies and TV,
It doesn't get solved in an hour-long format?
not even close. And so, you know, a lot of times a lawsuit is the only way to get the other side to react or engage. But it is often well, for me, it's the last resort. There are lots of other options when it comes to resolving a dispute. One I'll give you an example of. I had a client, still have a client. They are based out of Spain, and they deal with big diesel engines for boats. And a couple years ago, they got into a dispute with somebody who sold them some engines here in North Carolina, and that's how we came to represent them. Well, they were all fired up, ready to file a lawsuit, go after these folks because they had lost a lot of money. And what we ended up doing was having a pre-lawsuit mediation where my client came over from Europe, the seller of these engines and their lawyers, we all sat down, we got a mediator in, and we did what is going to happen in a lawsuit anyway. In North Carolina, when you file a lawsuit, there's going to be a mediation. But we decided, let's try this before we go and file a lawsuit and incur the expense of a lawsuit. And we were able to settle that dispute. My client was happy that he didn't have to file the lawsuit. He was happy that it was taken care of in about 30 to 60 days, rather than a lawsuit which can take, you know, setting aside small claims actions, which you can file yourself and get taken care of in 2 to 4 weeks. A normal lawsuit will run anywhere from 6 or 8 to 18 or 24 months.
Wow.
So there are a lot of alternatives to filing that lawsuit. So when
there's
someone,
a lot of money tied up, and what about the time? I mean,
well, and that's the thing. If a drywall contractor comes to me and says, hey, I'm owed all this money and I want to file a lawsuit, and there are some nuances on this project, you know, they claim that I did something wrong, you know, I haven't been paid. You hang drywall. That's the kind of business you run. But you're going to spend time with me in this lawsuit digging up documents, talking to your employees, your foremen, your laborers, your office personnel, your billing personnel. There are all these things that will take you away from your core business.
And my people.
And your people. And it's not even what you do well. So, you know, if you're going to have to testify in court, you know, some folks are great in open court, but most of us aren't. And so that's the other part that a lot of people don't see about a lawsuit, is it takes you away from whatever your everyday life is, whether it be a business, whether it be a family, and it hangs over your head. You know, it's stressful.
Right, right. Well, let's go the other end. I'm a savvy guy now. I've been on the internet. I think I know what I'm doing. I found a cheap contract on the internet. Can I just use that and, you know, don't need the lawyers anymore? Huh? Is that a good plan?
I wouldn't say it's a good plan, no. Certainly, again, with the advent of the internet, there are a lot more resources available to folks, and folks in general are more savvy. But the old saying, you get what you pay for, often comes into play. I'll give you an example.
Please.
I represent a home builder. He does a lot of renovations. And in fact, I've worked with him very recently. He came to me and there was a dispute between him and the owner of this home over how he got paid. And eventually it was just so impossible to work together that he had to leave the project. Now he's been sued. Well, he's got some very good defenses, but in meeting with him, obviously I asked for a copy of the contract. I looked at the contract. Not a very good contract.
Uh-oh.
I asked him, where'd you get this? And he said, well, I got it on the internet, looked good to me, looked good to her. And I said, well, when this is all over, we need to talk about your contract, or maybe even before it's over.
Right.
But, you know, this contract, while I tell folks all the time, something in writing is better than nothing in writing. Absolutely. You often hear us say, get it in writing, get it in writing. So, but this contract wasn't clear about what happens when there's a dispute. Can the contractor stop working? Does the owner have to pay for the work that's not in dispute? Does the owner not pay for anything? You know, most contracts have a default provision that says this is what is a breach of the contract, and usually the person that is not in breach must give notice to the other person, said, hey, you're in breach, and then there is a cure period. There is a period of time within which you can fix that breach. This contract had none of that.
So all these things in the contract, in theory, could have made the dispute not occur whatsoever, or they could have gone to the contract, resolved it right there, and moved on.
Absolutely.
And now they're in a position where they thought they had a good contract, but they're having to work with you to figure it out because the contract didn't cover those.
Well, not only are they having to work with me, but it's going to cost them more.
Right.
I mean, I understand that legal services cost money, but unfortunately, I try to educate people that you'd rather spend $1,000 or $2,000 with me before the spit ever hits the fan to get your contract to a good place, so that later, if there's a dispute, if there's a contract involved, that's the first place you turn.
Mm-hmm.
But if the contract is clear, and no contract can provide for every situation, but you can provide for most situations. And so, you know, if that agreement isn't clear up front, then a lot of gray areas that keep lawyers employed. But that's going to cost a whole lot more.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
Yeah, it is well worth the time, and more folks are getting used to that, investing up front, so that down the road it won't cost them more.
Right. Well, the Triangle has become a pretty international area. People from all over the world have settled here. So and it's becoming more important to address that. And I understand you are actually bilingual. You speak Spanish. Give us a feel for why that's important these days and how that is important to your practice.
Yeah, as we know, not just the Triangle, but the U.S., the Latino and Hispanic population is growing, and it's only going to continue to grow. And I'm fortunate. I was born and raised in Venezuela, grew up there, and I learned English and Spanish at the same time, just like you learned English growing up.
Right.
And so I didn't know it then, but I certainly know it today, that is a heck of an asset. And why it's important in my career is that, you know, as the Latino population grows in the Triangle and in North Carolina, more and more will need legal services that, you know, for business owners, for construction projects, for the areas that I've described to you. It isn't just what, you know, what often you hear, speeding tickets or workers' comp claims or whatever it is, while those exist too.
Mm-hmm.
So as a bilingual attorney, I have met many and continue to meet out in the community Hispanic and Latino individuals and business owners, and they get to talk to me, the lawyer, which I think is a very important distinction. A lot of offices and a lot of law firms do offer services for the Hispanic community, and certainly that's a good thing. But oftentimes it's a paralegal or an assistant that may be conversational in
Mm-hmm.
Spanish or may actually be fluent in Spanish. But I think it's a big difference when the client that doesn't speak English very well can speak to the lawyer and not have somebody else. And you know, you introduce a translator, and it's like that old game of telephone as a kid. Something's going to get lost.
Right.
And so, and it's amazing to watch a client come in that speaks broken English or very little English, and that's becoming less and less now. I mean, more and more folks are going to school here. You know, they're spending many years here. Their English is usually pretty good. But if they want to speak in their native language, it disarms them. They're more comfortable.
Right.
They'll share with me the details that are important, whether it's a deal, whether it's a dispute. And I think that's pretty important.
Well, you mentioned, as we were talking about contracts, the importance of understanding what's in the contract and how you can resolve things up front. So I would think that somebody who could explain that contract to them, either from the side of, let's put this in place for you so to avoid the disputes, or let's interpret what's existing and have an attorney explain that to you would be critical for somebody who English may not be that first language.
Yeah, and there are some folks where not only, obviously, if you're dealing with contracts here in North Carolina or in the States, they need to be in English. I mean, if you're gonna deal with an attorney on the other side that may not know Spanish, or you're gonna go to court with a jury that doesn't know Spanish, you need to have the contract in English. And don't get me wrong, there are ways to translate contracts and have them certified and what have you. But there have been occasions where for a client I've translated the contract and had an English and a Spanish version of the same provisions, so that the parties, if they feel more comfortable in Spanish, understand what the deal is. But then any person off the street who has to read the contract in English can understand what it is.
So you're not just passable Spanish. You can take it to the level of let's interpret this contract.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
And, in the end, whether it's in English or in Spanish, I'm going to help you understand it in layman's terms, not the legalese that, there is a lot of,
right.
But it can be boiled down into plain English.
Right.
And it likewise can be boiled down into plain Spanish. And so, sometimes it's educating somebody, again, whether in English or Spanish, about the legal system, the legal theories. There's a lot that I don't know about a lot of things, whether it's engineering, computer sciences, what have you. So but same thing for folks that are business owners. They don't know the legal system, but as far as the words in contracts or the ramifications of certain either words or activities, we just want to explain it to them in English.
Absolutely.
Or I mean plain English, plain Spanish, whatever
Gotcha.
It may be.
Gotcha. Well, John Paul, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I think people hopefully have a much better idea of how you can help them, whatever their legal needs might be, whether they need to get referred or need your services specifically. Are there any topics we haven't touched on that you'd like people to know about how you can help them, or have we covered all the bases?
I think you've covered it all. I guess the point I would hammer home again is that if you're not sure, if you've got a question, and just give us a call or shoot us an email. Again, we're not going to make a case where there's no case, but we may raise a couple of questions that you hadn't thought about. Yeah, I encourage people, don't be shy about calling. I'm not going to start that clock right away. If nothing else, you'll just get to meet another person, have another point of contact.
Right, right. Well, folks, we've been very pleased to have John Paul Schick of Ortiz and Schick as our guest today on RTP Business Live. John Paul's information will be at the end of this video and also be on our webpage. So check it out. If you have a legal issue or you think you might have a legal issue, these are the folks to call. So thank you again, John Paul, for being on our show. I'm Bob Collier with RTP Business Live. Thank you.